Hello, I'm Rachel Patton, Executive Director of Preserve Arkansas. Thank you for joining us today. Preserve Arkansas is a statewide nonprofit advocate for historic preservation. Welcome to our virtual Women in Preservation speaker series. The series features women from a variety of backgrounds to explore historic preservation in Arkansas, its importance and relevance in today's world, and ways that we can better recruit women and people of color to the field. This project is generously supported by DMX Architecture in Fayetteville. Thank you so much to DMX for their support. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Cheryl L. Batts, CEO and founder of PHOEBE, People Helping Others Excel by Example, was born in Hot Springs, Arkansas. She was educated in Arkansas, Iowa, and Indiana before receiving a BA in nonprofit management from Columbia College in Chicago, Illinois. Batts has spent the past 20 years preserving, protecting, and promoting the historical and cultural resources of the African American community in Hot Springs. She has served on numerous boards, including Preserve Arkansas. As a historian, she has been involved with the Arkansas Museums Association, Arkansas's Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, and the Garland County Historical Society. She has more than 20 years as a meeting and conference manager and has been recognized statewide for her public service. She is now actively engaged as project manager for the restoration of the historic John Lee Webb House, a contributing structure within the Pleasant Street Historic District. Please type your questions for Ms. Cheryl in the chat as she gives her presentation, and we will get to those at the end. And now I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Cheryl.
Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here this afternoon and share a little bit about who I am and a little bit about who John Lee Webb was. There we go. Who John Lee Webb was. Right now, we are sitting on top of something that's really big and something really exciting. We're very excited to be a part of Preserve Arkansas and Women in Preservation. The John Lee Webb House sits in, is a very prestigious house. It's been around for quite some time. One of the things that I love about the house is that no matter what the weather, no matter what's going on, it's still a very beautiful looking house. This picture was taken in the winter this year of 2021. Right now, this house is a beacon in the largest African American historic district in the state of Arkansas. That's what makes it so important. And I was born right in the middle of that district. And I could remember what the area looked like before I left and before I went to school. I received my BA, as we said earlier, and I went away to Chicago. I traveled around Iowa and Illinois, California, even went to Africa and did a missions trip there. So when I came back to Hot Springs and I saw my neighborhood and I saw what it looked like, I was actually devastated because I didn't remember it. So I wanted to know what happened to the neighborhood, you know, what happened? And so I began to ask questions. And I found out that the things that had happened in our neighborhood happened all over America at the time. There was redlining, poor jobs, no bank support. The educational system wasn't the same, drugs, alcohol, you know, all the things. And I found it hard to believe and hard to accept. So after asking questions, there's something that you have to do. If you get the answers, then the next thing you want to do is move forward. And what happened here with me was 3 women made everything happen beautifully for me. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time here with you guys. Here we go. We went on a fact-finding mission, and we drove from Little Rock to Hot Springs constantly for about a year or two. Dr. Edith Irby Jones was the first person to congratulate us and to encourage us in what we were doing. The other two women, Rosalind Goltz Hudson and Wilberdine C. Howard, they would put me in the car and we would drive over and we would go and we would see and talk to the people that we called SHPO at the time. So I began to ask them questions, and they began to explain to us what was necessary to create a historic district. But you know, it was funny because in talking to them, they already knew that Hot Springs had the goods. The challenge was that they needed someone in Hot Springs to accept the challenge and begin to move forward on putting the information and everything together. So that was what we began to do. So in 1999, we got the Historic Preservation Alliance Award for outstanding service in neighborhood preservation. And in 2000, we were selected by the National Trust for Historic Preservation for leadership training. And we attended the National Trust for Historic Preservation conferences as an emerging preservation leader. And we did that for 2 years. And that was with a recommendation from our friends, Taylor Kemke Architects. And, you know, there's a constant learning pattern that I think we all need to have. I knew that I did not have archaeology, genealogy, none of the things that will make preservation happen, because preservation is a combination of a lot of things that I found out. So we took community development. We had the Community Development Institute at the University of Central Arkansas. We learned grant writing. And then we also had another training here in Hot Springs with the National Trust. In 2000, where we did a training on preservation. We brought everybody in the community in and tried our best to explain to them the significance of what they were sitting in, and about to explode before them. We also took classes in film, and the reason for that is we began to find that even with oral histories, people would talk, but people were not reading. They like to see, they like movement. So we have to change things according to what is going to work. So I learned how to do films. So after I learned how to do films and sat with a mentor, we began to film the oral histories, and they became very important to documenting and researching what had been going on in the Pleasant Street Historic District. Now, this little girl here is Little Black Diamond. They called her baby Cheryl. Some of you know her as Cheryl. Well, she used to ask her mom and her grandmom questions, and they would answer those questions. So it found out that those answers that they gave her were like storytelling. So we began to realize that storytelling is just not storytelling and sharing stories. It puts anchor in our lives. It ensures our future. It is giving value to our existence. It is blessing our differences. It is telling the world who we are and why we are. So that little conversation that the little small Black diamond had with her grandmother came to realize that as a large Black diamond, that these oral histories are storytelling, which for third world countries were the most efficient means of sharing or keeping the history of a family or tribe, was very important. So this group right here, the Uzuri Project Youth Institute, what do these children have to do with what we're going to talk about? Everything. It is through them that we got the stories from our senior adults. Senior adults love to talk to children. They love to see children who are willing to talk to them, who will sit intelligently and ask questions, and they begin to share their stories. And in those stories, we begin to document the African-American presence in Hot Springs. And we found that there were many amazing storytellers in our community. Junia Stevenson, Buford Gordon, Pearl Graves, Wilberdine Howard, Carolyn Hughes, Dolores Massey. Many of these people were storytellers, but they had not been given the opportunity to tell the stories. And so they would tell the children and we would film that, and it became the crux or the basis for what we're doing, here with Phoebe, the USURI Project, and the USURI Project Youth Institute. This is the Pleasant Street Historic District, this small little place right here. You wonder how so much had happened in such a small place. Well, it's surrounded by Visitors Chapel AME Church, which is also on the National Register. It's surrounded by Webb Community Center, which is on the State Register. And of course, the John Lee Webb House and the Woodmen of Union Building, which is also on the register. And all of these places are interconnected. Is they connected to one person, and we found it all out through those oral histories, and that was John Lee Webb. We have an organization called the Gateway Community Association, which actually is District 2, and it surrounds this whole area here. So here we are right in the middle of the Gateway community. The house that we want to talk about. This was the first picture that I found of the house. And it was 1908 and it was a postcard. And long before I knew that we were going to have the house, I saved that picture in the newspaper and I would go and look at it, and I'd go look at the house and just, just talk about how great it would be if somebody would just buy that house. One of the things that I also found out is that you can want to do something wonderful, you can want something big, but you got to lay a foundation as to why the area, why the people are important, and what did they do in that area. So one of the things that I did was, that I'd like to do with you today, is to lay that foundation with you and let you know that we had people like Don Newcomb, Larry Doby, and Roy Campanella that came to Hot Springs, and they were at the 5-star hotel and restaurant, which was unheard of for an African-American community that was located in the National Baptist Hotel, also known as the Woodmen of Union. We also had clubs. One was the Cameo Club on Malvern Avenue. It was owned by Kitty and Bubba Page. And the Page family actually owned about 51% of all of the businesses that were on Malvern Avenue. And this was a picture that we found of them with a gentleman by the name of Lionel Hampton. Some people do not remember Lionel Hampton, but he was very famous. He played a xylophone, and he was also a representative in Israel for a period of time for the United States. So these people, because everything was segregated, and they always came to Hot Springs, because Hot Springs, as we later found out, was listed in the Green Book. And we'll talk about the Green Book a little bit later. But these pictures were donated by family members and people that wanted us to secure and have an African-American museum, someplace where people could go and see what African-Americans had accomplished. This picture here with Hot Springs native Henry Bernard Glover, recently in the past few months, I don't know what's wrong with my mouse, folks, but it's moving on its own. He's become he was very well known, his songwriter and a musician. I'm going to suggest, because of a lack of time, that you kind of go to Wikipedia and look this guy up. I mean, he changed the face of music in the music industry, where Black people were maybe writing music. He was changing and working with the upper echelon in the music world of R&B. And so I'd like to encourage you to look more into that. This is going to be a year where he's going to be celebrated a lot. Bill Bojangles Robinson, he danced in 1994 down Malvern Avenue to raise money for a woman who was on crutches, so that she could take the baths at the bathhouse. This is this one I'm very happy about. This is Dr. Mamie Phipps Clark. Now, she lived on the corner of Garden and Pleasant Street with her nephew, who was Alfred Edgar Smith, also known as Cherokee Charlie. And Cherokee Charlie was he was one of the journalists for the Chicago Daily Defender, which was the largest African-American newspaper in the country. And that was his claim to fame. But his auntie, Dr. Clark, studied the effects of segregation and racism on the self-esteem of Black children. I'm sure that you remember the case of Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka in 1954. So the house that they lived in still stands in the Pleasant Street Historic District, giving us even more foundation for this area to not only be saved and restored and protected, but for people to understand that there was something there that gave everybody a heart and encouragement to keep moving and to do great and powerful things. Here you see, this is President Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt's Black cabinet, which survived between 1933 and 1945. And guess who was on that cabinet? Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, and also Alfred Smith, AKA Charlie Cherokee from Hot Springs, Arkansas. So again, moving from Hot Springs and moving into national and international things, these are the reasons why we felt that the neighborhood was important enough to save. Now, this sharp guy right here is George Jones. This picture was taken around 1930. Now, George Jones had a brother, and they were called the Jones boys. And they were from Little Rock. And they became part of the National Association of Policy Kings. The Policy Kings would travel to Hot Springs with suitcases of money. They operated similar to, but not exactly like the mafia. A lot of their money went into building hospitals and churches in Chicago, New York, Detroit, where they were from. But the one thing they all had in common is that they all came to Hot Springs to rest, relax, and spend their money. And of course, they were spending their money in one little small area of Hot Springs, again, due to segregation. So this put a lot of money, a lot of economic development into that one little area that we just looked at. And made it so that people were able to build their homes. They were able to take care of their homes. They were able to send their children to school. Now, in 1926, the Woodmen of Union Building was built. And at the time that it was built, they had their first convention, and it was the Colored Teachers Association. So through research and asking questions, we definitely found that we had visitors that would come and be a part of these conferences. One was Julius Rosenwald, who is best known for the Rosenwald schools. And during that time, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, who in 1904, founded the Bethune-Cookman University. And she was here for that first conference that was done at the Woodmen of Union. Other people that came into play for our neighborhood and made us know that this was something that we wanted to, a neighborhood that was worth saving, was Dr. Edith Irby Jones. Her first medical office was at 423 Malvern Avenue. And this is where Dr. Timothy Bottoms also had his office. Dr. Jones actually worked for Mr. Webb as a secretary while attending Langston High School. And it was these skills, certainly not my typing skills right there, that helped her to work her way through UMAS. And she thereby became the first female colored to graduate UMAS in 1954. So now that I have laid the foundation for you of the significance of the neighborhood and the significance of the house, this is what the house looked like in 1923 to 1954 when Mrs. Carrie Webb, passed away. She passed away in 1954. And by 2014, this is what the house looked like. Nobody knew the history. Nobody knew what was going on. There were people who were talking about buying the house. They wanted to take it down. But there was so much history, and I just kept singing. I kept singing, and I kept talking, and I kept singing. I kept going to the city. I kept talking at meetings about the significance and why we needed to save that. I talked about saving, restoring, preserving, protecting, and promoting our piece of the legacy, the historic John Lee Webb House, the Emmy Elise Webb Community Center, and of course, the Woodmen of Union Building. And pushing these things and encouraging everybody that these are things that our children need to know about what had been left for them. What was their legacy? They had a legacy. They should be encouraged. So this was going back to why we wanted our children to be involved in what we were doing. It was in 2014 that the biggest thing that ever happened to me personally happened through a friend of mine named Deborah Carroll Phillips. She said, you need to write a book. And I'm like, yeah, right. Okay, so I'm gonna write a book after everything else I've done that I've never done before. She said, you can do it. You got all that information, put it in a book. And she said, Preserve Arkansas is having they're having a program, and you can turn the book in and see if you win something. And I was like, yeah, right. So we went ahead, followed her, and we did write the book, and it became John Lee Webb, The Man and His Legacy, and it did win Preserve Arkansas, the Ned Shank Award for Preservation publication. And in this book, it's about 266 pages. It talks about Mr. Webb. It talks about all of the things that he did. It talks about how he built not just the Webb Community Center for his daughter, who died early from ovarian cancer, not just how he built, working with William T. Bailey, one of the most prestigious African-American architects in the country at that time, the Woodmen of Union, but who he was as a person. He spoke at all of the schools, and I understand from some of the oral historians that have since passed, that when he spoke, he actually stuttered. But he turned out to be one of the most prolific men in our community, who was willing to do what was necessary to bring and put our community on the map. So once the book was done, the story behind that is we went to the house and found out that someone was going to buy the house. So I thought, this is just perfect. This is great. Go and buy the house. Yes, let me send them a copy of this book so that they can see how important it is. So I went to Rick's daughter and got the information, and he told me the lady's name was Patricia Perrin. So we sent her a copy of the book. Well, about that time, as we sent her that, we decided that it was good to put the house on the most endangered, Arkansas's most endangered, to bring more attention to it. So with her permission, we did exactly that. And so she came to the program and she heard us talking, and she read the book, and she said she knew there was something special about the house, but she just did not know all of that happened in that house. So as we began to have relationship with Patricia, she came to us, I would say about a year or so later, and told us that she wanted us to have the house. She said she had a buyer, but she didn't want to sell it to them, that she felt that we could keep the house, that we could bring the house up, and we could make the house what it should be to the community. Well, needless to say, I was the last one to agree that we should get the house. I was petrified. Didn't know, it just seemed, too big. It was just too much to take on. And I was like all over myself. Sometimes you can get in your emotions. So I just got in my emotions, and I just was like, no, I don't think we can. And as it turned out, we had a very strong board that said, listen, we can do this. We have to stick together. We're going to do it for the children. So that was it. We began to have informal meetings in the community, letting everybody know about the house and why we wanted to purchase the house, why we were going to take the house and, restore it. you can see that with anything that you do, you got to raise money. So that's a constant theme of raising money with a house like this. We invited everybody out that November 15th to a friends and fundraising event, and we talked to them about restoring the house and what it was going to be, what we were going to do with the house. And from the very beginning, we knew it was going to be the headquarters for the Missouri Project Youth Institute. We felt like the children would have this opportunity to walk through this house and feel the ambiance and the activity of knowing that these famous people walk the halls in this house, and be encouraged that if they can do it, that if they could do it, they as children, that they could do it with our help. And the city also bought into it as a whole, as a community, and encouraged us in this situation. So again, this is what the house looked like in 2014. It was all covered up. Our first volunteer group was Job Corps. They came out, they cut back all the trees, they did all of the work. They told us what trees we need to save. They put in time with us, and we're very grateful for them. It was very sad when Job Corps had to close, but the last thing that they did was allowed us to be able to see the house and show the house as it looks here in the lower part of our screen. Again, our children are very important. Once we were able to kind of get into the house, we took the children over, opened all the windows so that they could see what was going on. And this is our architect. He is Quindici. He is our project architect. And he would take the children over to the house and share with them from architectural perspective what was going on in the house and what they could expect, and that this was their house. And they could expect that even as they grew older and they would graduate, they would always be able to come back and know that this was their house. Now, demolition first started in June 23rd, 2016. We have here our own David Reagan, who in the beginning was able to come by and spend time with us, offer suggestions. And I know he was thinking to himself, are we ever going to get it off the ground? But he was faithful. He did come by and he helped us quite a bit. And these are our contractors that eventually came contractors on that, and that's Tony and Mike Udrowski. And as you can see here, this is when the demolition began on the house. 2016. So now you see there's been a lapse of about 2 years. It took us a year to find out who we could go to ask for money to begin the work on the house. And then it takes another year after you find out who it is to write the grant, and then wait for them to tell you excuse me, wait for them to tell you yay or nay, you got the grant. Well, here we got the grant in 2016 and the work began. This is how the house looked after demolition. Before windows, the roof, the porch, the porte cochere. This was about 2016. Also in 2016, we had a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment done. We went to a conference. It was called Targeted Brownsfield Assessment. What's that? We didn't know. We had no idea. We just thought we would go and figure out something. Surely there was something in there we would find out about. Listen, guys, sometimes you don't always know. Sometimes you back into stuff and you just have the passion. So here we are sitting in a targeted Brownsfield assessment, trying to figure out, why are we here? What do these guys do? How can they help us? But because we had the tenacity and the determination, we sat there and listened and listened and listened till we finally figured out that basically they were EPA, and they could come in and tell us whether or not we had mold or asbestos in the house, and show us and talk to us about the removal thereof. And there was a grant to do that. So there you have it, folks. Just go to the meetings sometimes and listen. That's what we did. Here you see Tony Udrowski of the Udrowski Brothers Contractors and Quindici, our project architect, talking about a particular part of the house. And I believe it's on the south side of the house, which would be, for those of you that know the house, on Grove Street. And as they were talking, you can see here, this is where I have my little testimony for you. You see, good grief. You see that lower picture there where all of the mortar is falling out of and away from the bricks. And so this was on that Grove Street side. I was absolutely devastated. I didn't tell the architect, I didn't tell the contractor. I'm looking at this house and I'm looking at these bricks and I'm looking at how bad that looks, right? So after everybody goes home, I drive back around about 6 o'clock in the evening. I'm sitting in the car and I'm going, hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? I was confused. I said I would come all this way just to see this. And I really did not know, folks. That has nothing to do with the contractor and the architect. They knew. Miss Cheryl, she didn't know. I'm looking at them pulling out all of this at the base of the house. It looks like termites were there. It looks like there had been a fire. So I'm calling on the only person that I know to give me strength and courage without telling the guys that I'm coming apart. Because I'm thinking, we're not gonna make it. But that was my first experience. Yay! This is what they did. They came in and they fixed it. They put in the foundation. They turned it around in 2017. They put Tyvek paper up and then they moved ahead. And there you have it. This was finished by the grant from HPRG, Arvis Bank, and public and private donations. So you can see I was very, very happy at that point. It was my first experience about what can happen in restoration of a historic home. So y'all forgive me if I got in my feelings. The other thing that I had to do was learn about terminology. So for me, this was a little castle, just a little castle right here. And so I'm like, oh, look at the little castle and everything. So I have to tell you, the contractor, very relaxed guy. He just like, oh, okay, you mean the little steeple. Let's say you have a little steeple thing. But you don't play that with the architect. I love him. He is an excellent teacher. He was like, no, it's a corner turret, multi-sided tower with steep roofs. Yes, as though I was going to remember that, but for his own sake, so I wouldn't drive him crazy, I tried to remember that. And this is where they begin to replace the tiles on the corner turret, multi-sided tower with steep roofs. And this was the finished product of the corner turret, multi-sided tower, and tiled roof. I was in love. Now, this is probably the next to the last time that we were going to be able to use what was called an aerial architect to take pictures that way. We later found out that it was that they would not allow us to do that. But I'm so glad for your sake and for my sake that you were able to see what this roof looks like from above. It was just magnificent. Here's another view as the guys were putting on the tile, which they took off each separate one and put it back up individually. And we were very fortunate that the way this house was made and the workmanship, we did not have to replace that many of those tiles. I think it was something less than $2,000 that we had to invest to replace tiles, and the whole thing was about $90,000. So you can see these different views of the roof, and we were at this point, the whole neighborhood was coming out every day watching this. Every day they would watch these guys put these tiles on the little dolly and pull them up and pull them down and put them back. It was just made for the whole neighborhood to come out and see what was going on and give us an opportunity to share with them, you know, what was going on in the neighborhood and how we were wanted them to be a part of what we're doing. So again, you got to raise the money. So this time we thought we'll call it raising the roof for the house that John built. And so that's what we did. We went out and we raised money for that. And because everything has to continue to flow. You get one grant and another grant, but you have to have a match. So it's always about keeping everybody involved so that they understand and that they know what's going on. And so we had C. Kugel, a roofing company in Maumelle, that did the work on the roof. It was just wonderful. The guys were really efficient. That was just such a wonderful experience. Here you can see three things. You can see this roof right here and this roof right here. And there's a small one called an eyebrow roof back here. That's another roof. This house had 3 roofs. Believe me, I didn't know that. So we had to take care of that. Also, the house has 120 windows throughout the house. So we worked with the Community Development Block Grant, the City of Hot Springs, and I think HPR also worked with us on that one too. And we had Sorters Construction come out, and they did all of the windows and got the windows prepared, you know, for the house. And right after that, Preserve Arkansas in 2017, because we had so many windows, I guess everybody wanted to know, you know, wanted to see our windows. So, you know, everybody came from statewide to see our windows. We were excited about that. Who knew that windows were that important or that we would have that many windows? So Bob Yatt, who a lot of people recognize from television, was the instructor for that. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. We learned a lot about the windows and how to put them in, and everybody had an opportunity to do that. And so you see here a couple of our board members with Bob Yatt and the workshop participants. That was a really beautiful day to have so many people from around the state come and work with us, you know, to see how the windows were going to be done or had been done. Additionally, we were able to apply for a grant to protect the historic windows from the City of Hot Springs. Not to protect the windows from the City of Hot Springs, but a grant from them. I don't remember the name of it, but I know it was with their expertise and help that they told us about it. It's a window treatment, it's polycarbonate, and it was ordered from an organization called COCHERE, but it's manufactured by a company called Secure View. It's a better look for historic homes and homes that are empty than the wood that we normally put on the windows to keep people from breaking in. This is very, very sturdy. You can hit it with a rock, you can hit it with a hammer. And as you can see, this little right here is one of the holdings, the fixings that goes through to the other side to hold this polycarbonate in place to protect the window. And it does not touch the window sill at all. So the window that was just done is thoroughly protected. And it also helps us with insurance because it allows the insurance company to know that we've taken that extra step to protect those windows on that, especially on that ground floor when everybody is making investments. The next thing we started was to lay the skeleton of the porch and the porte-cochere. So you can see here that they've already laid the skeleton out and they started the work. This was also the City of Hot Springs and City BG and HPRG working on that. Here you can see we're almost there. This is the side from Grove Street. And you can see looking in how it's coming into shape. And over here, you can see from the south side on Grove Street how it looks there. Once the porte-cochere and everything was done, we decided to do pictures underneath to show you under the porch And under the PORTE COCHERE, the work that was done and how we maintain, I guess you would call prominence by putting it back exactly the way that it was. This is something that we learned early on, that you've got to put it back the way that it was in the beginning as much as possible. So they did that on the windows, they did that on the roof, they did it on the porch and the PORTE COCHERE as well. And this is the finished product of the PORCH and the PORTE COCHERE that was finished in May 2019. And Matt Foster was our contractor for this particular part of the house. Here's some other pictures showing you from various angles and various places of the house. This right here was very cool. We took this from the original porch and put it back in right there. So that was there. We put that in. You can see that again here. And right here, there is a light that was under the porch. And there was, I guess, a fake ceiling. And so Kondichi was out there one day. They were doing some things, and then it pulled it out and a lamp fell out. And so they saved the lamp, and we've had it restored. So when the house is finished, we'll put that lamp back there. Now this shows in 2019 how we kind of keep it moving. This is again structural foundation to the other side of the house. You saw where we put the foundation together where the brick had fallen out. So now we're going around the house to the basement and putting in new brick and new foundational. And they went inside under the house and put in the piers and everything so that the house will stand forever. And this work, of course, was done by the EDITH brothers. And once you start building, and you've been building as long as we have, we started out in 2014, all excited about it. In 2015, we told everybody. 2016, we applied for the grant and got it. Now it's 2018. And so the governor decided to come by and pay us a visit so he could see how the money was being invested. So we were all excited and everything. We made the whole neighborhood clean up. Say, y'all get them garbage cans out of there. The governor is coming. So we all put on our t-shirts and waited for the governor to come. And the governor showed up, you know, and our friend Les Warren, hey, Les, he came and was also there. And of course, there's Kondichi and the board members and Reverend Chester Jones at the time. And one of the things that was so funny to me, after we were talking to the governor outside, we brought him inside, we talked about what we wanted to do. And he says, well, where are you going to have the children? I said, well, it's upstairs, but it's not finished yet. And he was like, oh, okay. And listen, he turned around and sprinted up the steps, and we were all standing there looking at each other like, what? And then all of a sudden I got a revelation, follow the governor, follow the governor. So we ran up the steps behind the governor to the second floor so that we could share with him that this is where the children would be getting their classes. This is where their classrooms were going to be, and where some of the offices also are going to be. Sometimes people think that when you are not outside working with the contractors and doing those kinds of things with the house, that you're not doing anything. But there is a constant need for us to not just be concerned about, you know, money to pay the contractors and the grants, but also there are other things like insurance, and that's not covered by grants. So we have to raise money and keep our name out there so that you guys know what we're doing, so that when you feel like you want to give, or when you think about us, you realize that there's more to just the house and the contractors. We have to pay for insurance. We have to pay, I think it's called risk insurance. So if it's an accident, that we can take care of that. And if there's fire, that we have enough to cover it. So every year they show up, you know, and look at the house and, you know, let us know where we stand as far as that's concerned. And so we have to pay for that insurance. So we go out when invited to places like the archaeological conference and tell people what we're doing with the house. And I think this is where it became very clear to us that It was more than just building a house. It's the people that were in the house. It's the cemeteries the people are buried in. It's the archaeology that can be found in the grounds of the house that the grounds that the house is standing on. All of these things make up preservation. It's just not a one-sided deal. We even had genealogy conference in the very beginning so that people could begin to understand how important their genealogy was to the community, to themselves, and to overall what we do in preservation. So we had EPA, they came, and so 2 years later, EPA invited us to attend their Region 6 Brownsville Conference. And we were here with Arkansas State Representative Frederick Love, Woody Davis and myself, and retired Karen Pasecki, Targeted Brownsville Assignment and Local Revitalization Coordinator. And we went there and talked with them about the house and what we were doing and how everything was working together and the grants. And we didn't realize it, but we were a bit of an oddity when it came to historic preservation and EPA. So that's a story, that's a whole nother story altogether. So this is a quick review. This is what the house looked like in 2015 after all of the debris had been removed. Here's the house in 2014. Here's the house with the finished roof. And here's the house and what it looked like in 2016, 2017, once we had all the windows in and everything. And this design here was done by Darnessa Hudson, one of our, the Usury Project Youth Institute alum. So here's the house now in 2020. This is what it's looking like right now. And so I guess you're wondering like, well, where we go from here? Well, this is one of my favorite pictures. It just looks, you can just see that the house is beautiful, whether it's winter, spring, summer, or fall. And the stories that are hidden in the walls that we plan to keep telling and to dig and bring out more so that people understand that this house is special. It's not only special to our state, it's not only special to our city, but it is special to our nation for Black communities to sustain itself for such a long period of time and become a part of the fabric of the United States, where people came to Hot Springs to be bathed and to enjoy because we were a place where they could feel comfortable. So now this year, spring, we'll see us doing preparation. We did preparation for the brick masonry. Here you can see what the house looked like, the wood, before the wood was replaced and covered by something called max felt. We use max felt on this side. And so this is preparation for this, for spring very shortly, where we'll start to put the bricks back on that side of the house. Now, don't forget that we did manage to do the south side of the house when the bricks fell out. So that side is done. So the only side that we have to do is the back portion and the north side of the house. And we're also going to do this spring, the ancillary roofs that we talked about earlier, that I told you there were 3 of them. And that's this roof right here. And oh yes, I learned a new name. This is called an eyebrow roof. Oh yes, an eyebrow roof that has to be done. And this roof over here, I think this is a flat, it's just a flat roof, but it's the one that has a little bit of trouble. So we're definitely going to be getting started on that like right away. I'm not sure if I have a good picture of this. I hope I do. I will, if I do, I'll talk to you about it. I called it gingerbread, a little, it looks like gingerbread, but I was amazed by that because the contractors they drew the shape of it on the material, cut it out and hand put it in. I mean, that's how meticulous these guys are and what they were doing. It was just awesome to see them do that work. So the masonry and concrete work that we would love to be able to finish this year will take care of the sidewalk here. And this is in the front of the house. This is on the Grove Street side. where there is a driveway where we want to go in and they're going to go in and replace all of this. Some of it will have to be removed and, I think leveled out. I'm sure I'm not using the best terms for it, but we'll all try to keep it according to protocol for the house. And these, you can see here how things have come apart here. And this is the front door of the house. So we'll be working on that as well. Now, the rest of the house, outside of the house, we want to get that done. We're going to be applying to other funders because we have really been, I think we've really been blessed beyond belief by our city, the city of Hot Springs, and their CDBG funding program for these years to get us this far, as well as HPRG. And so we're going to try, I hate to even say it, but you guys put that vibe out there that we're going to really try to work with the National Trust and see if we can get them to invest in this house for Hot Springs, for our children, and for the state of Arkansas. We believe it's worth it. This is the original basket weave sidewalk that is in front of the house now. And this followed Pleasant Street, most of that Pleasant Street when I was a little girl growing up. But, things happen. So right now, this is about all that's left of the original basket weave sidewalk. So we, of course, want to replace that. We want to replace the restoration of this original stone wall fence and these pointers right here. See how some of them are going one way. So we want to try to, we will be able to restore those. And this right here is very special. It's not such a great picture, but there's a historic tree that's growing here, and the roots came out and kicked out the rest of that stone wall. We had to have an arborist to come in and tell the contractor and speak with the architect about what to do to make sure that we could save the tree as well as rebuild the wall. And of course, there is an easement on the house. Whenever you work with the state or HPRG, you have to have an easement. And I can understand that when people are investing in your property, they want to make sure that whoever someone should buy it later on, there's an easement that says they can't change the outside, but they can change the inside. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. Isn't this beautiful? I love this view. Like I said, this is probably one of the last aerial views that we're going to have of this house. There's our faithful architect taking this view. It shows you the entire sidewalk down to the historic tree that we just talked about, the beautiful green tile roof that was done, windows, and the porch and the porte-cochere. And so we thought this was a good way for you to see the fence line of the property and the original tree. This is that porch and porte-cochere driveway that we're going to be working on that we told you about as well. Inside of the house, the only thing that we can show you that is beautiful is the attic. Everything else is still in disarray. We've cleaned it out. It's cleaned out, but we are not going in. Once we put up the protective carbonate on the windows don't open, so we can't open the windows, and we don't want people breathing the mold or and the air that's in there. So we stay out of there pretty much. But I thought this looked like a cathedral. To me, it shows how the contractors back in the day that put that tile roof in made sure that they built it to last. And I think that was one of the things I heard the architects say, that this was really an awesome job. It just looks so wonderful to me. These are the leveraging. These are the things that were leveraged, monies that were leveraged from 2015 to 2020. As you can see, this is the figure so far, a number of contributions that have been made. Overall, we feel pretty good. Corporations and the Environmental Protective Agency, EPA, faith-based organizations, these are the grants. GoFundMe and other Facebook donations, and individual donors and nationally have donated very well. Sororities, fraternities. So this is where we stand right now in the total amount that has been invested, but it's worth the investment because of the children and the history that documents who we are to not just ourselves, but to the United States of America and what was done in Hot Springs during this time. Over the past 5 years, we ended up having creating these brochures. These brochures show you what happened out of just one house. We have the house, we have the book, we have the emerging leaders who are our hearts. They're the ones that started everything, that got our seniors to talking so that we were even able to get the rest of the information. Someday we hope to do heritage tours and of course the Pleasant Street National Historic District. Now, you've heard me talk before about the Green Book, and if you have not seen the movie, The Green Book, and if you have not seen the movie, The Black Panther, you really need to see both of those movies. I don't know why you're on here and you haven't seen those movies. You need to see those movies. Those movies are very important. So go see the movie so you understand what the Green Book is all about. I know some of you on here do. I'm just teasing, but you know, research showed that between 1932 and 1964, 25 homes, villas, and hotels were located in the Pleasant Street National Historic District. So here's the coup d'etat of why it was so important that this neighborhood be saved. 25 homes. Now, of course, not all of them are still standing, but it's the idea that all of America, we're the only ones that can say that we have at least some of those homes that are still standing. And I was very, very excited that in July the 9th, here in Hot Springs, we've been told that there will be a virtual tour of local Green Book locations planned by the Arkansas Historic Program that will be coming. I talked with Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Wilcox over there in Little Rock, and they're very excited about it, and I'm very excited about it. It's the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program, so they'll be talking about that, and that's going to be on July 9th. So you guys, you know, stay abreast and make sure that you follow that. And so here we are at the end of my presentation. I'm excited that I was able to share with you what we have done and where we want to go. One of the things that I would want you to understand is that John Lee Webb, he was a very, very famous man. And I know that we didn't spend a lot of time talking about him, but let me give you just 1 or 2 points. His donations to Morehouse College led to an oratorical contest being named in honor of him. And Dr. Martin Luther King won that contest while at Morehouse. So see, this is not something that goes way, way, way back. Dr. King won that oratorical contest that was in the name of the Honorable John Lee Webb. John Lee Webb also led the charge with Honorable Walter Ebel of Garland County to establish an industrial school for delinquent Negro boys. On March 24th, 1921, the Governor Thomas C. McRae signed House Bill number 24, Act 526 for the Negro Boys Industrial Trade Schools, and the pen was transported by the Honorable Walter Ebel to Mr. Webb. In 1923, he founded the National Laymen's Auxiliary during the National Baptist Convention's 43rd annual session held in Los Angeles, California, and they still celebrate him today, every January, because of the investment that he put not only in the organization, but in the training of young men. And of course, in 1945, he built the Emma Elise Webb Community Center, named for his only daughter for the Negro youth of Hot Springs, backed financially by his wife. She was independently wealthy. Yes, she was. Carrie Elaine Bronson Webb, and the building still stands today. So with all that in mind, I want to thank everybody for this opportunity to share with you where we are going, and you can see that we're always in that process of raising funds. And I think any nonprofit is always in the process of raising funds. So this is not unusual, but it means that we have to stay busy, and we want to make sure that we always give you something to see so that you know we are doing what we have told you that we're going to do with the money that you have donated to us in this very large venture. So we would like to thank all of these people. Quindici, Yazowski Brothers, Arvis Bank, EPA, CDAC. CDAC is the advisory council to the Community Development Program, our mayor, our board of directors, District 2, Elaine Jones, Rick Stoddard, the Hot Springs Planning Department, the Department of Arkansas Heritage, and the Arkansas Black History Commission. If I missed anyone, it was not out of my heart, it was out of my head. So forgive me. And thank you again for your time. I really appreciate you all so much for allowing me to be the face of a woman in preservation in the state of Arkansas.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. That was an excellent program and an amazing project, amazing work. Now you have some questions. Let me pull them up here. Well, first of all, you have a ton of very, very nice compliments and kind words.
Thank you.
And
Thank
so
you.
I will make sure to everyone who wrote something to Miss Cheryl, I'll make sure that she sees this afterwards. So we'll go to the questions first. That one got answered. Who was the original architect for the house? Do we know that?
I don't know if Quindici is on or not, but I don't remember who it was off the top of my head, but it was, I know that it would not have been an African-American because it was built by the Hugaboom family. And I'm sure that information is embedded someplace, so I can look that up and maybe get that information to you at a later time.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And I don't remember if you talked about it in detail, but you kind of referred to it about the brick, and people could see obviously the wood frame underneath that brick, but that, you know, John Lee Webb bricked the house, right?
Yes, he did. He bricked the house in 1923. You know, the first picture we showed you was 1908, where it was all wood. And so it was by 1923 that he bricked it, but he did not destroy the frame. He left the wood there and just bricked over it with bricks that actually, we believe, if I remember correctly, that came from the work that they were doing at the Woodmen of Union Building. So they had the same big masonry people. So his house and the Woodmen were made out of the same brick. And we saved that brick too. So that's the brick that's going to be used when we start this spring to, you know, finish off the side of the house.
Okay. Are the window panels temporary while renovation happens, or are they permanent, the protective panels?
Oh, the protective panels, those are temporary. Those are temporary. Once we move into the house and everything, then they will come down and we'll return them to the city, and they can be used any place, you know, any place else, excuse me, that needs them.
Okay. Is the house open to the public?
No, not at this time. Like I said, we are still, it's too tight and it's too much mold, and with the protective covering, we can't open the windows and get air. So I have been warned by the contractor and by my architect, there will be no flowing through this house until after we have EPA come in and remove the mold, and with the little white suits on. Once that's done, then we can, start talking about letting people walk through.
Okay. Okay, from Patricia. Cheryl, do you decide what to do next based on the funding you secure, or do you follow a specific order for rehabilitation?
I follow a specific order for rehabilitation. My architect and my contractor tell me what to do, and I do that. They know exactly, what needs to happen next, and they follow the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for everything. So once they look at everything and say, these are the things that we feel that we need to do next, then that's when I begin to write the grant for it.
How long did John Lee Webb live in the house?
He lived in the house from 1923 till his death in 1947. And his wife stayed there until 1954.
Were contractors selected based on their experience with historic preservation?
Yes, they were. With any federal funds, you have to bid, you have to put out a bid. So one of the things that we wanted to be sure is that the people that were applying had experience with historic property. That was the main thing. And of course, they have to be licensed and certified, so before anything can happen. So yeah.
I think that's all the questions. But again, I said you have so many kind, sweet comments. I think people really enjoyed your presentation. I know they did.
Thank you.
So yes, thank you again. And I'm just going to briefly share some slides at the end. Just a couple things. There we go. So thank you for joining us, everyone, and please come back again on April the 13th for our next Women in Preservation webinar. It will take place again at 3:30 in the afternoon, and our speaker next month will be Dr. Ann Ballard Bryan, co-owner of Bryan and Devon, LLC, and instructor in the Department of Art and Design at the University of Central Arkansas. And finally, to learn more about Preserve Arkansas and to become a member, please visit our website at preservearkansas.org and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you all again. Have a good rest of the afternoon. Thank you.